Oh, hold on. Hold on. Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Genise Steckel. Thank you for joining. No,
Yes, you are live. You are live.
I'm live. Okay.
You yes, Denise, you are live. We can hear you.
Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. My apologies. It's morning here in California. Today, I'm going to take you through. I'm going. Um, I have a bit of an echo where I can. Okay. Let me start over. Welcome to the Clinical Collaborations commentary or overview. And what I'm going to share with you today is clinical collaborations, why and how, insights into managing combination studies. Combination studies. So let me just jump in and I'm going to share with you the information today. So the agenda, why we do combination trials with collaborators. We'll review the evolution of combination studies, key factors for success, and advantages, challenges, and lessons learned to date on this journey. So, why we do these trials? To identify safe and effective combination therapies, to support cross-indication learnings and identify combinations for priority development, to identify molecule, mechanism of action that will work in combination with one of our molecules. So please note that oftentimes we're using a collaborator drug, so a different company's drug in combination with one of our Genentech Roche products. So we're going to review the evolution of how this combination and collaborator study started, because this was a new kind of field or area for the Genentech Roche team to work in. So we initially started this work in cancer immunotherapies, so CIT. This was really a grassroots effort that started, where there was occasional studies here and there where we were working with different companies. However, within months of forming this cancer immunotherapy group, we found ourselves answering a lot of questions. Do you only work with cancer immunotherapy combinations? Who should I speak with if I want to do another combination study with a different molecule? And could your group help us implement a collaboration study? Because please keep in mind, when you're working with a different company, regardless of the therapy area, it's really the same process. So we very quickly had to reevaluate this group that we put in and the evolution of the collaborator. So those three questions I mentioned provoked larger discussions within the organization to ask how many global collaboration activities do we have ongoing? Who was supporting the other collaboration activities? Who could support them all in the future in one harmonized fashion? And did the work processes we had created, could they support all collaborations, even in the non-cancer immunotherapy space? So ultimately, there was a decision to create a global dedicated group, which is is a really big agreement or area to kind of move into, that there was acknowledgement that this was very important to do. So we mapped all our stakeholders and our business generating groups, so business development and alliance management, our clinical scientists. We reviewed and did a standardization of all tasks to be supported by the team. And we actually rebranded the group to Industry Clinical Collaborations. And this group is located, part of the group is in Canada, part of it is in Switzerland, and part of it is in the United States. So I just kind of want to review with you continued evolution of this, because this group does some pretty specific functionality to make sure that these collaborations work well. So we have a dedicated group. We're always aligning on the requirements with both companies very early. So when we're working with a company outside of Genentech Roche to bring their product in, so we can use it in combination with one of our drugs, we align very early on those requirements. We understand the collaborator supply chain, because again, please keep in mind, when we bring their product in, we're releasing it in a Roche or Genentech sponsored study. So we have to understand their supply chain to release it in under a global clinical study. We have to discuss the quality path forward. So if we're going into Europe, how are we going to get in QP to do the release? Different parts of the world have different requirements, as this team is probably very familiar with. We have to have clear communication on study start timing. So site activation, first patient in, those are very critical. This team will manage it through study closure and final CSR, and all publications and associated closeout activities. So this industry clinical collaboration team really takes care of that relationship from the initial negotiation of all the required documents and agreements going in through the final closeout activities. And the thing I think that is important to recall or remember is that collaborators are not contract manufacturing organizations to Roche or Genentech, meaning they don't make their molecule for us. They make their molecule for them and they provide it to us so we can use it in a clinical study. And then we give them the data. So we don't have any input on how they make their product. So we need to be very thoughtful about that, because this is a combination study where the patient is going to get our drug in combination with the collaborator drug as their clinical trial setup. So they give us the drug, we give them the data at the end of the study. So it's really a win-win for both companies. So what are some of the key factors for success in this collaborator work? Consistent interaction with the collaborators. So I mentioned a dedicated team. There's actually a dedicated team member for each company that we work with. We have routine meetings, so there's routine check-ins. There are standardized agendas. And this dedicated team member will actually facilitate all discussions with the internal stakeholders and the collaborator. So what I mean by that is we're going to make sure that the dedicated team member sits in these discussions so that the messaging and the information sharing is very clear with the collaborator. There's also a clear escalation process when events occur that cannot be resolved at the local level. And what could cause an escalation event would be supply concerns, production challenges or changes, or regulatory challenges. And this is just a very short list of what could require escalation. So other key factors for success in collaboration work is implementation of necessary contracts. So initially there's a master agreement, a supply agreement, a quality agreement, and a safety data exchange agreement. All of those get put in right away. Study startup and maintenance, so the supply plan, resupply activities, material transfer activities, manufacturing location changes, and other regulatory changes. And then the study closure activities, so the CSR completion, financial reconciliation, document closeout, and publications that happen or get created because of the study data, which is very important. So as we look at what are the advantages, challenges, and lessons learned to date on the journey, I think this is always good to reflect upon because it helps you understand what you've corrected to move forward and where you still need to grow. So for advantages, the dedicated global group to support all collaborator work is hugely important. This is brought in work that was happening in all parts of the organization to one specific group, which has really allowed our internal stakeholders to understand who to go to help them with collaboration work. We've created standard processes to support this work so that not only do we have just a go-to templates and work processes to work from, but our internal stakeholders really understand how we're working with the collaborator. So every time we talk to a clinical scientist, they know exactly what that work looks like from a supply agreement or a master collaboration agreement or a quality agreement. And then the other thing for an advantage we've realized is that we have dedicated subject matter experts internally. So with quality, with our QP group, with our supply organization, with our distribution organization, those are hugely important. So you're consistently working with a group that understands what the work is happening in the collaboration activities, because this is very different than a co-development. And that's where people, I think, get it a little bit confused. So let's talk about some challenges because they are certainly there. So for challenges, there's many internal stakeholders with different expectations. So our regulatory stakeholders, it's a big group, and we need to make sure that when we're working with a regulatory group that we're being thoughtful and we're working with that subject matter expert to get the consistent response and answer. Another challenge is clarifying that what is different about the industry clinical collaboration team is different than a partner or contract manufacturing work. So again, this collaborator isn't making their product for us, it's their product, and we're using it in combination in a study that we are sponsoring. And then we will provide them the data. Many collaborators to support with different approaches and systems. So we work with a great deal of companies, and every company is a little bit different, of course. Regulatory impacting changes are a huge challenge. So we always work and ask questions of, are there any changes coming to the process of manufacturing? Are there any regulatory impacting changes happening? Because in this exchange of material, we are cross-referencing the collaborators. We are cross-referencing one of their clinical studies that they're already ongoing with, right? So because that's proprietary information, so we're not going to file on their behalf. Generally speaking, we're going to cross-reference one of their filings. And then supply. Supply can be an issue, so we always want to make sure that we're balancing what the Roche Genentech studies need and being a good corporate citizen to make sure that, you know, that the collaborator has what they need to run their own studies, because they are running their own studies. So the lessons learned to date have been many, and we continue to learn every day. So internal stakeholders think of partners in very different ways. So we always need to be very clear about what the collaborator is and how we need to manage them. They're not a contract manufacturer, and we're not co-developing the drug with them. We need to have clear and open communication from the start with the collaborator and with our stakeholders. These are significant contracts that are in place, so we need to make sure that we're always clear and open discussion. Every collaborator is different, and I mean that in earnest. They do their work differently. They think about sharing information differently, and their product is different, and oftentimes can be very different than what Genentech Roche products are. You know, what we're used to. You know, kind of what our hedgehog is, right? So that's very critical for us to be very open about and understand that we're going to be learning along the way with them. The other lesson is that we really need to make sure we have a very clear understanding for materials going into the EU and the Brexit impact with the new and ongoing studies. As this group is probably very familiar with, the Brexit impact was pretty significant. And then the last thing that I'm going to mention here is the dedicated group will be engaged in many different topics. So this industry clinical collaborations team has to be very open to learning and understanding and exploring different areas of the business. So tax code, regulatory filing requirements, operations, qualified person, responsible person, and quality assurance requirements, both internal and external. Alliance management expectations, so those are our business colleagues. Clinical operations, your IB management, so your investigator brochure, very important piece of this. Final study closeout, routine reporting expectations, and legal expectations. And that's just a very short list of the topics that each clinical industry clinical collaboration lead will have to manage through. I always say every day, if you don't learn something new, you probably weren't paying attention, because this role and this work that we do goes from the very beginning discussion points of we want to do a collaboration to the final study report and the final closeout activities. So we manage the whole process start to finish, and that at a short period of time could be probably 2 years, and at a longer version could probably be 4 or 5 years. So with that, I would welcome any questions, and I really do appreciate your time and attention for this today. Thank you.